Hi, my name is Shelomo Solson, founder of Purpose Creates Impact, host of the Teenage Impact podcast, where you will find inspiration to get over your struggles as a teenage kid. I was bullied, had anxiety, depression, had friends pass away, and battled confidence issues for a majority of my life. Whether you have the same issues as me, feel lonely, face challenges in your home or in school, I'm going to be interviewing people who overcame these struggles and provide you with tips on how you can overcome yours. By the end of this episode, I want you to rate and comment on what you think of the podcast. This will allow the podcast to be ranked higher and serve more teenagers. Hi everyone, this is Shelomo Solson, founder and president of Purpose Creates Impact, the host of the Teenage Impact podcast. This is going to be my sixth episode, my first ever interview for the Teenage Impact podcast. I've had Arman in my collaborations before. Arman is a good friend of mine. I've known him for about 9 years, and we've grown together. He is now a communications expert and coach. He helps build people's confidence in public speaking and social dynamics. And just within a year, he's gained over 15,000 followers on Twitter. And he has several clients doing so. How are you doing, Arman?
I'm doing well, Shlomo. How are you doing today?
Good. Arman, I'm going to break this interview down into 3 sections.
Okay.
So, since this is for teenage kids and inspiring teenage kids to overcome their struggles as a teen, because, as a teenager, we go through all these different mood changes and a lot of things happen in our life. You mentioned that you've had social anxiety, low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, people pleaser. You felt inferior. You're the skinniest kid in class. You felt like a failure. And you said you used to be awkward, which is hard to believe. I'm going to break it down into 3 sections. The first one is going to be your story.
Okay.
Second section is going to be how you overcame those struggles. And then the third section is tips for anyone else who's going through the same exact thing as a teenager. Sounds good?
Sounds good to me.
Good. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your confidence and your lack of confidence as a teenager. Tell us, you came from Bangladesh.
Yes.
Very early on. So tell us your story.
Sure. So I came from Bangladesh around when I was 5 years old. And when I was in Bangladesh, the most popular language, of course, was Bangla. But then out of nowhere, one of these days, I ended up coming to the US. And I noticed that people were speaking a certain language. It seemed very foreign at the time, but it was English. But in Bangladesh, we would read and write English, but we wouldn't necessarily speak it. So for the next few years, I actually had to really, really understand how to speak English. It was a very tough time for me, and I would often get mocked and ridiculed for my accent. So that was a really tough part. And I spent years and years being that shy kid, right? So I was being the very shy kid. That was problem number one. Now, the second problem was the problem that I was really, really skinny. I was really skinny. And this is where I was getting ridiculed, not only from home, but from school as well. So from home, typically Bengali parents, they want you to be, healthy. I mean, being fat is better than being skinny. So I was getting the ridicule from home, why are you so skinny? Don't you eat?
Your mom doesn't feed you enough?
And my mom's the one telling me that. And then when I would go to school, I was literally the skinniest kid in class. And just to make matters worse, I was very short as well. So a kid with a very strong accent, shy, short, skinny, a mix of all 4 of these combined, and automatically my confidence was just plummeting. And you can just imagine, because number one, it's a culture shock as it is.
And what grade is this?
This is around kindergarten onwards. So I went on like this for years and years, all the way up until I did get to high school. So now I'm a teenager and I'm still feeling like this. And around this point, I genuinely didn't really know the art of confidence. There wasn't someone like yourself that was designing programs to help with confidence. And to be quite honest, I didn't really know what confidence was. You know what I'm saying? Like, you always hear the term, oh, be more confident. But I wasn't quite too sure what that was at the time.
Uh-huh.
So during those teenage years, I definitely did struggle, and I struggled a lot.
Do you have any specific stories of, I remember hearing the story of when someone pushed you. Do you have any specific stories of bullies?
So there were, yes, yes. So one of them was, here's how it works in school, where all the cool kids sit in the back, right? And I remember one of these days I got into the bus and there was someone sitting on my assigned seat. So I was like, ah, dang, like, where do I sit? I usually take that assigned seat very seriously. So what happened was I was like looking around, and I saw one open seat, and this was all the way in the back of the bus, like literally the last seat possible.
Bold, very bold.
Very bold. And I was like, what do I do? It was like, do I go all the way there? Because that's not my
I
territory.
want to be a cool kid now.
Yeah, I'm going to be the cool kid. I'm going to force myself into there. So I slowly started walking to the back, to the back, to the back. And I see like the dorks, in the front. They're like, whoa, what's Arman doing? I mean, he's going a little too far, right? And I'm still walking. And now there's the cool kids who's looking at me very shocked. They're like, the heck was this guy doing here? Did they lose something? But I keep on walking until I get to that last seat. As soon as I get to that last seat, I put my backpack down, sit down, and I'm just ready for the bus driver to get me to my location. That's it.
Without any trouble.
Yeah, I don't want any problems at all. But I was definitely out of my comfort zone, and I was out of, you could say, my place at that time, because I was disrupting the social hierarchy. And that was by far the most daunting and toughest bus ride that I ever took. As soon as I sat in the back, I kid you not, like, everyone was asking me my name. As soon as I would speak, they would start making fun of me. They would start, you know how we have these roast sessions for fun? But back in those days, they were having those roast sessions to like legit clown me nonstop.
Every single day.
Yeah, because now, like, before, these cool kids didn't even know I existed. But now, since I entered that territory, I became visible in their eyes. So I became this target for pretty much the rest of the school year. So it made it very tough, because when you're in school, like, believe it or not, the bus ride is a big part of your everyday. So that was a very tough moment for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you had the 5 stages of haircuts, right?
I had the 5 stages of haircuts. And for those of you who don't know what that was, this was my first ever speech in Toastmasters, where I discussed the 5 stages. Well, it was actually the 4 stages, now that I think about it. And this is the 5th stage. So at that time it was 4 stages, but this was, and basically
what stage was you getting bullied?
So this was the comb over stage.
Uh-huh.
When I had this comb over and some parts of the buzz cut stage. And each of these stages represent different stages of my life. So I had a lot of haircuts, and it just surprisingly fell in with the different stages of Arman.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about your social anxiety, because you're a pretty social guy now. In our fraternity, you were the external VP or the social chair, and you brought everyone to events. So how were you social? How were you anxious when you're around big crowds?
So I always believe when you don't know much about something, your brain starts thinking in a very chaotic way. And that in itself gives it a negative label. So I didn't really know what social anxiety was back then. I didn't really know about like the energy levels, perceptions, all that stuff. So automatically, I went to the negative route. And for me back then, the main reason I didn't like social events too much was because I was already shy as it was. So being around all these people seemed very out of ordinary for me. So that didn't feel right. And in many situations, just like days leading up to a social event, it just didn't feel right either. I was like, dang, well, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What if everyone's watching me? And even though it seems a little ridiculous, I mean, why would everyone watch me? I'm sure everyone thinks everyone's watching them, but you don't really know it at the time. So a lot of the social anxiety was from, number one, not knowing about it, and number two, it was also from just being the shy kid as it was.
Was there a moment where you froze up in middle school or high school?
So I wouldn't freeze up, but what would happen was I would have trouble saying something.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a lot of people contributing in a conversation, I feel like I have the perfect thing to say, but I keep thinking of, oh, no, wait, Arman, before you say something, you could word it like this. No, Arman, word it like that.
Oh
word it
my
like
gosh,
that.
I had the same exact problem.
Yeah, and you're thinking so much, or not like now they're at like a new point, and you're just like, dang, I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And that's when you lose your opportunity once. It starts kind of keep on making you. I guess you could say it's a freeze in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And let's see. You used to feel like a failure. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So here was the thing. You know how a lot of people, they don't really know what they wanted to do since a young kid? Personally, for me, I always knew that I wanted to become an engineer, which I eventually did end up becoming. So in many ways, you would feel like, oh, well, he did what he said he was going to do. But the thing that was lacking back in the days when I did feel as though I was failing was that I knew how to become a good engineer and how to be a good engineer, but I didn't really know how social interactions work. So I had like these accomplishments, but I just didn't know how to share it with the right people. So in that realm, I did feel as though I was failing in certain aspects. I couldn't put my finger on it.
Gotcha. And then I know in the Indian culture, and we're both from the Asian culture, a lot of times we have to please other people, especially our parents. Did you have to overcome that?
Yeah. So my brother, he was this amazing test taker. I kid you not, like before the SAT, he's just chilling. He's watching TV. My mom's like, boy, you have the SAT, go study. And he ends up scoring like 13, 1400, something like that. But me, I mean, I'm over here studying for months and months. I think I studied for the SAT a year in advance. And the day of the test, I just started freezing. Everything that I had studied for the year just went out the window, and I ended up bombing the SAT. So personally for me, I was never like that amazing test taker.
Did your parents ever yell at you for doing poorly?
Yes, I mean they were upset. Let's put it like that. Like at first it was yelling in certain cases, like, "Oh, you didn't study hard enough," but more so it was disappointment. Because you know how it is. People like our parents, they came from a different country here mainly for the education. So if the kid isn't doing well in education, you feel like you're letting them down.
Gotcha.
But then there's another problem where the kid, they're not really leveling up their education because they're not being interested in what they're being taught, or they're just not good test takers.
Gotcha. And let's see, we talked about your social anxiety, your lack of confidence, you felt inferior too. You talked a little bit about the back of the bus, but were there other stories where you felt inferior to someone else?
Well, yes. Another one, this is a little different, but it wasn't even with social interactions. It was with sports, where I realized that I wasn't the best socially. So I decided that, I wanted to get really good in something that I felt as though I could really control. Because I can't control people, but I could control my skills.
Gotcha.
And that's when I started to focus on basketball. And I would just spend a lot of my free time playing basketball nonstop. And I remember, like, as hard as I would practice, I would always see other people that were better than me. And I didn't know if they were practicing hard enough. And in some cases like that, I felt a little inferior. I was like, dang, so I'm working my butt off and it's still not enough. So what is enough?
Yeah, we both have similar stories where we came from a different background. English wasn't our first language. We got picked on by our accents. We were not confident. We were afraid of what other people would think of us. We were trying to please our family, try to please our friends. We wouldn't speak up. How did you overcome that?
That's a great question. And
What was that? Was there like, was joining the fraternity helped, or was there like a particular moment where you said, I'm going to decide that I'm no longer going to feel inferior?
it was a decision. It was definitely a decision. And the fraternity played a big role in it because once I joined the fraternity, I noticed that I was being exposed to more social events than ever before. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, whoa. Like, I thought I was just going to join the fraternity and that was it. But no, I mean, that's when the real work began. So that was number one, where that made me aware. Now, the second part where I had to make the decision was when I realized that in order for me to rise in the fraternity, I had to speak up. There was
Yeah,
no way around that. And around that time, I think you were joining Toastmasters. And I
yeah.
remember I kept hearing about the club. And that's when I started to express interest in it. I was like, this may seem very bold, but what if I could become a public speaker?
Yeah.
If I could speak in front of 50 people, then me having a one on one interaction is light work, it's cake.
I still remember his first speech where I brought him to Toastmasters. I was the president of Toastmasters back then, and he gave a speech. And one of my mentors came up to me afterwards. He said, "Your friend Arman's going to need some work." He kept on saying uhs, and look how far you've come.
Yes, thank you, thank you. But that moment, that moment was very unique because I think that yeah, that was actually the second time ever that I went to Toastmasters. The first time I don't bring up too much, but nowadays I rock it.
Uh-huh.
But that's when I got called on stage and I didn't say a single word. So that time when I said like so many times, it was bad. Don't get me wrong. But now at least I saw, whoa, I can actually speak in front of the audience. And then the next time I was like, all right, now it's time to get rid of the so then I was able to cut down on that. Then it was about giving from a table topics to a plan speech, then more, then more, then more. So to answer your question, it was definitely about turning your biggest pain into your greatest strength.
And for those who don't know what Toastmasters is, it's a public speaking organization. They have like a structured speech where there are three planned speeches. Then you have around 4 to 7 improv. They call it table topics, where improv table topic is an improv speech where they ask you a question and you have to speak about it on the spot. And then later on, towards the end of the meeting, they have evaluations where there's someone who critiques your speech to make you better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you talked about college and post college. Let's go back to high school. Let's take a few steps back to high school. When you're about 16, 17 years old, was there a moment where you started becoming more confident? You started speaking up? I knew you started working out. You're a little bit more muscular.
Mm-hmm.
What was that moment?
So basically in high school, what happened was, and this is going to sound very, very weird, but up until 11th grade, I was only 5'3".
What?
Yeah, I was only 5'3", and
You hit
that's
puberty really quick.
yeah. And then when I hit it, I went from 5'3" to like 6', 6'1". So my entire life, I had like very, very low self-esteem because of being short, and now I'm magically this tall kid, right?
Yeah.
And I became even skinnier. So I was like, all right, if I could become tall, I mean, I could become muscular too, right? I could gain some weight. So I started to do that. And once I became 6 foot, I started working out.
What age did you become 6 foot?
I became 6 foot when I was 16,
Uh-huh.
about to head into like 17. Like, so it was pretty late 16ish.
Okay.
So, so the first half of 16,
Close to senior year.
close to senior year, because I'm 1 year younger than like my grade. So yes, so by the time I was entering senior year, I looked like a brand new person. But even during that time, I mean, a part of me, like, I had this new physique, but I didn't really understand what confidence meant. So I didn't really know if I was confident quite back then. I was starting to do more research into confidence around college, but high school, I was still like figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the
And then
figuring it
you
out
start
process.
working out.
I started working out, started to, and now it was funny because girls like me. And I was like, wait,
What?
I was like, wait, what? You guys like me, huh? And I didn't even know what to do. So it was definitely a brand new life over that one summer.
Just right before senior year happened, you just became a new person.
Yes, physically I had completely shifted. I like you wouldn't even recognize me.
And did you have a group of friends that you always hung out with? Did you start becoming that cool kid?
Well, so a lot of people expected me to become that cool kid, but
Uh-huh.
mentally, I was still that guy that was like, how do social interactions work? How do you talk to a girl? How do you do this?
Yeah.
How do you do that? So
Did you have a girlfriend back then?
back then, I had one girlfriend. Yes,
What, 16, 17?
it was 16.
Okay.
I don't know why I said one girlfriend. Yeah, I had a girlfriend. So I was 16, and I was still figuring it out. I'm like, so how does this whole boyfriend thing work? And I'm treating her like kind of like one of the boys. And then I start seeing like the different dynamics between a male and a female. So it was really a learning curve,
All
you
at
know,
16. A lot of people go through that curve in middle school.
in middle school, right? And it was funny because to this day, every now and then, I was like, I learned a lot of this stuff really late. But in many ways, it's great because nowadays I can learn from those moments and share these insights for certain people that are listening to this, going through the same exact
Who
thing.
probably has never had a girlfriend or boyfriend. I
Yeah,
didn't have my first girlfriend till summer before college.
for this song. Oh, so you were even later than me.
Yeah. I'm like, what? And I go to college. Whoa, girls like me. I'm cute. What?
Yeah, you look like Drake. So
Good. So you went from skinny kid in class to now becoming tall, muscular. You started increasing your confidence. Tell us a little bit about the people pleaser. When did that kind of stop?
so the people pleaser stopped once I made one huge mental shift,
Uh-huh.
and that was instead of trying to compete with all these other people, instead of being this visionless person, I decided to focus more on myself. So
Uh-huh.
instead of going external, I was now going internal. And now I was focusing more on having a goal. Okay,
Uh-huh.
just one goal. And once I shifted my mentality towards this goal, now pleasing other people became like laughable. It was
Uh-huh.
like, why would I try to please other people? Like, I got to focus on this goal.
Yeah.
And once I started to do that, that's when the paradigm shift really started to happen.
Yeah. What type of people or what type of things would you be concerned about of what other people think of you?
Just about like everyday topics, like, oh my God, like, am I saying the funny thing? Like, wait, why didn't that person laugh? And then other times it would be like, um, I wonder what they think of me.
Uh-huh.
Oh wait, are they judging me? Like after I said this, they give me that weird face. So I really, really cared about other people's judgments of me.
Gotcha. And what about like grades and stuff? Did you care what your family thought about your grades?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was always a little tough for me because,
Uh-huh.
like I said, test taking, that kind of stuff was tough. So it was it was even tougher that my cousins are all like geniuses. I kid you not, like they get like 2200s, 2300s. Some get perfect scores on the SATs.
What?
Yeah, so it makes me look even 10 times dumber. And I'm just like, dang, man, I wonder what my cousins think of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of it was due to other people's perceptions.
So you say once you start achieving that one goal, pursuing that one goal, you stop caring about the external world.
Yes. So there's this
What was
concept.
that? What was that one goal?
So personally, for me during that time, it was becoming the best public speaker that I
Okay,
could. So the goal was,
about a couple of years ago.
yeah. So the goal was, okay, Armand, first, and here's the funny thing, like once you get one goal going, you start getting like this avalanche of goals.
Mm-hmm.
So the first goal was to get on stage and speak. I said nothing. The second goal was to get up on stage and speak. I said a bunch of words, but now I said a lot, like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned. The third goal was to speak without saying so many filler words. The fourth goal was to go from table topics to planned speech, but it's this avalanche of goals regarding public speaking,
Mm-hmm.
regarding the umbrella. And once you keep going from the goal to goal, eventually I'm giving presentations. And then the next goal is to volunteer for leadership positions and to
Mm-hmm.
grow, start your own club. And it's just basically once you go into self development for your own life, you're going to get an avalanche of these different goals.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the more you keep investing yourself in that avalanche, other people's opinions become like this waste of time. Like, who cares if they think this about me? That's not impacting me towards getting on stage and giving a
Yeah.
speech, for example.
Yeah. When you're in college, and let's go back to the social anxiety. When you're in college, Did you ever feel anxious around people, even after you joined the fraternity?
After I
Even
joined,
after when people said, wow, Arman's pretty social, did you feel it this time? Or was there still something inside saying, hey, I still feel anxious around large groups of people?
there's a very unique answer to this. I did feel it. I physically felt it, but my perception toward it was
Mhm.
different. So instead of calling it social anxiety now, I call it social excitement. Because any interaction, like even now, like, as we're talking, there's tension, you know? Because humans are creatures of energy. Any interaction, there is going to be
Yeah,
tension. Now the thing is, what are you going to perceive it as? Before getting on stage to speak in front of 500 people, you feel a level of tension. These are the same feelings that you feel right before a roller coaster.
absolutely.
But for one of them, you view it as speech anxiety, the other, you view it as excitement. So for me, I definitely did feel that level of feelings, like body feelings, but now I would consciously focus on this is a good thing. Like imagine if I didn't
Absolutely.
feel anything at
Mhm.
all, I would be talking like this.
It makes us human, it makes us want to achieve, it makes us want to go further and then explore new things, correct?
Yes, and when you demonize the feelings, you get social anxiety and you
Uh-huh.
start suppressing.
Yeah.
When you welcome it with open arms, you express the energy
Mhm.
and you get charisma.
Gotcha. Do you have any tips for anyone that is not confident, that possibly came from a different country, has an accent, doesn't want to speak, doesn't want to approach people, doesn't want to make friends? What are your tips?
So my biggest tip is to create value for yourself. And what I mean by this is what Shlomo is doing for like this entire platform is amazing because I got into the whole personal development grind later on in life. But if you can get into it earlier, your progress doesn't go like this. It's not linear. It goes like
Yeah.
that. So once you start developing yourself, confidence is going to be a byproduct. So just pick that one thing. What are you really curious about? And many times your answer will be behind your pains. Like I had speech anxiety, and guess what? That was that one thing that I needed to make my goal about. Instead of trying to overcome it in one day, just do it piece by piece by piece. And the more challenges that you're overcoming, the more confident that you're going to become. And the more confident that you become, now it's much easier to go up to different people, start interactions with them, because you don't feel like you're taking something from them. You rather feel like you're giving something to them. You
Okay.
see, it's like
Gotcha.
imagine if I'm like, yo, Shlomo, you and I, we're going to go down the street right now, and I want you to ask different people for $100. You're going to be like, $100? Well, this is weird, Armand. Excuse me, sir, do you mind if I get $100? No? Okay, okay. And this is how you're going to act.
Uh-huh.
But imagine if I give you $10,000 and I'm like, give people $100. Now you're going to be like, excuse me, sir, here's $100. Here's another
It's an
100.
interesting point of view.
Yes. So what I want your viewers to understand is create those $100 bills from within. Just piece by piece, the more goals that you stack up, the more valuable that you become. And eventually, you're just going to be giving other people $100 bills every time you interact with them.
I know when I was in high school and I was starting a certain grade, I would, in the beginning of the year, I would always sit by myself
Mm-hmm.
because, in the beginning of ninth, 10th grade, beginning of sixth grade, didn't have many friends, didn't really want to approach people and say, hey, can I sit with you? I didn't have it in me. What would you tell those people?
So for those people, I want them to know that everyone to a certain degree feels nervous, you know? So number one is if you do feel nervous, don't be like, oh well, why do I feel like this? Why do I feel like that? Go away. Because now you're making it worse. But instead, just be like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. Why is this? Once you make sense of it, now the nerves will melt. And once you do it, just take it one interaction at a time. That I've always been a big proponent of that. Just one interaction at a time, and you'll start developing your social muscle. And eventually, it's going to become easier and easier and easier. I was really similar to you. I used to sit on the bus by myself. I used to sit in the class by myself. I didn't feel comfortable sitting with these people because what would they say about me?
Yeah.
But
Would you find one person to sit with? or would you find a group of people who look more receptive and try to join that table?
I recommend trying both, but personally for me growing up, I would find that one person because I didn't want to approach a group. If I can't approach one person, a group seems very daunting. But I recommend to your listeners just take it one person at a time. Then eventually you can see a group of two, you'll feel much more comfortable.
Gotcha.
Yep. Try not to overwhelm yourself from the very beginning, but it's a process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And what about people who come from an Asian household where they have it engraved in their head that they have to please their family, they have to please their friends, they have to have the highest grade in the class. If not, then people won't accept them. What would you recommend for them?
One thing that I recommend for them is to just gain some perspective from books. It was really funny, but one thing that really kept me motivated was I forgot which guy it was. I don't know if it was Abraham Lincoln or someone, but throughout his entire life, he was just like failing, failing, failing. But in many cases, like personally for me, not being a good test taker has been one of the best things in terms of being good in business. Why? Is because you you have to fail when you get into the real world. This whole condition about you're not failing at all.
Having a structural, like right and wrong answer.
Absolutely. So what I recommend for your listeners is instead of focusing so much on that grade in order to get acceptance, focus more on exercising your work ethic. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, like if I were to give my younger self advice, like Armand, stop chasing the A so much. Just work as hard as you can, design a structured plan, keep following it day in and day out. These are all tips that or skill sets that apply to your real world, right? Keep doing that day in and day out, and the good grade will be a byproduct.
Would you say pivoting is extremely important? If something doesn't work out when you're trying to get a good grade, pivot fast.
Yeah, pivot fast. I mean, see what didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the biggest things is to be able to learn from your mistakes. So over time, you see what isn't working and keep on recalibrating from there.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, don't let other people's perceptions dictate your behavior.
Yeah. And one last thing I would say is if you're awkward, I know I used to feel awkward. I still sometimes feel awkward at times.
We all do.
But especially in social interactions, you are with a group of people and sometimes you don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
How do you overcome that?
So if you don't know what to say, I mean, here's my advice. Like if you don't know what to say, then either do a micro acknowledgement or just say whatever. Now, what do these mean? So imagine if you and I are having a conversation and you get done talking, I don't know what to say. I could just do. And now this indicates to your subconscious mind, like, hey, I want you to keep on talking.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be surprised how often you get more information out of that other person because that other person did want to keep on talking. So that's a micro acknowledgement. And two is that you're just practicing whatever. When you think too much, you're doing thought, maybe say something. But if you just go thought, say, thought, say, thought, say.
That's so true.
Eventually you start exercising your mind. And the third thing is sign up for Toastmasters, do some table topics, and you exercise your social muscle like none other.
Yeah. I know the more you think about it, the more awkward you're going to feel.
Yeah, because the social interaction is supposed to require you to be present and be in the moment. But when you're in your head too much, now you're doing the exact opposite of that.
Gotcha. Do you have any last tips for any teenage kids who feel awkward, who are not confident, who possibly care about what other people think, who having social anxiety? Do you have any last tips?
One of the last tips that I have is that it depends how you view it, okay? Everything always comes to a matter of framing. And if you think that social skills can never be improved, then it will never be improved, unfortunately. But if you view everything as a muscle that simply needs to be worked out, a skill set, then it will be improved. Wow. So from the very get-go, I want you to start focusing on your mindset. Like it will be improved. It will be improved. Fight through the discomfort and keep on pushing forward. And the more goals that you tackle, the more that you're going to build your confidence. And here's the thing. you never just become confident. Like, oh, I'm confident. It'll time to mail it in.
Yeah.
You think LeBron James is ever like, oh, well, I figured out basketball. Never going to practice again. No, you always become more and more confident. So my main thing is stop focusing on everyone else. Compete, but with your prior day self. Make today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. And you are going to be confident in due time.
That's so powerful.
Thank
So
you.
powerful. And Arman is a perfect example for someone who came from a different country, was skinny, didn't know any English, was awkward, and now he's teaching other people on different social dynamics and how to communicate and how to speak in front of a large group of people. He's a role model to many people. Thank you, Arman.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me.
No problem. Arman, where can these teenage kids find you?
You can find me on ArmaniTalks.com, where I drop blogs, podcasts, videos, tweets on communication skills. So if you are trying to improve your communication skills and you don't know where to get started, I drop a lot of content regarding this topic.
Thank you. And for those who are tuning in from my YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe to Purpose Creates Impact. If you're listening on my podcast, subscribe to my podcast channel, The Teenage Impact. Also, don't forget to rate it. Let me know what you think, because the more people who rate it, the higher it will be on the podcast apps, and the more teenagers' lives I can impact. Peace.
Peace.